Welcome to the Systems Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right. Hello, Adi Klevit here. I'm the host of Systems Simplified podcast, where we feature top founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders on the subject of systematizing your business. And today I have here Tracey Hicks. I'm so happy to have you on my podcast. So I'm going to introduce you in a second. I'm just going to talk about the sponsor for this episode, which is Business Success Consulting Group. And at Business Success Consulting Group, we document processes and procedures and create management systems for businesses so they can grow and expand. And I'm sure you can agree, Tracy, that businesses cannot grow and expand without systems.
Only because I worked with you.
But even without it, that's true. But even without it, you would agree, because I think that systems, definitely businesses need systems. And that's what we do. So check us out at bizsuccesscg.com. All right. So now an introduction of Tracy, my wonderful, wonderful guest. She's a friend. She's a client, and she is an amazing, amazing businesswoman. So, Tracy, why don't you tell us about ATRE and Dwell and what you do?
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's kind of funny because, we have our own podcast too, and I haven't been a guest for a while, but I certainly haven't been a guest with somebody who I was also a client for. So this is super cool because then I get to talk about how you and I worked together and helped me in my business. And, I think it's like that full circle thing. So thank you for thinking of me to be on. I'm super excited.
You are very welcome. Okay, tell us. So you are the founder of All Things Real Estate and Dwell Realty.
Yeah. So I've been a realtor in Portland for, I think it's 17, 18 years. I think realtors get like after 10 years, they're like, I don't know. It's been more than 10 years. But so I was a realtor right out of working with children for like 15 years. And then I went into real estate, changed careers in my 30s, which people apparently thought was crazy to do. But I was like, no, I need a change in my life, and that's what I'm going to do. So real estate was a really perfect transition. I loved it. I love the clients. I loved, obviously looking at houses and all that fun stuff. But really what I was finding out that I liked the most was the marketing, the design, and then also working with other realtors. So, I started when the recession hit, because I came in right when things were really, really booming. And then a year later, it literally, I hate to use the word crash, but for me in my life, that's what it did. It just came, I was like, what is happening? Because I was new, in real estate. So I didn't know. And obviously that wasn't a thing that was, it wasn't common. It's not like the market goes up and down that extreme. And so I had to do something to make money because houses weren't selling and there were foreclosures. And so I started a newspaper called All Things Real Estate. And the idea was for realtors to have a place to market their listings themselves and really just kind of normalize real estate to the general public. Because unless you've bought or sold a house in the last, 5 or 10 years, you're really not familiar at all on how the process works. So I did that for a while, and that paid the bills and kept me going and not, falling into keeping my head in the sand as I did a lot during the recession. Well, that kept my head up a little bit. And then after that, we started, actually during the recession, just coming out of the recession, we started Dwell Realty with my business partner, Chris Gwen. We had left our company because I couldn't afford to be to pay to hang my license at another agency. And so, we just started Dwell. We worked out of his basement for the first year. And then when the recession was kind of coming to an end, we saw a building that was for rent, and it just worked out that literally our credit was terrible. We had no money, and all this stuff just kind of fell into place. This building had a grant attached to it and all this really cool stuff. We knew the building owner, and she really worked with us. And so we started Dwell, and that was 10 years ago. And then the newspaper turned into a magazine, and then that quickly faded out because that is a whole job all by itself. And that's not what I wanted to do. So I started the store. And so now I sell real estate supplies and products and marketing promo items and whatnot, but really super cute ones,
Absolutely.
not the ugly stuff that you see out there a lot of the time. So yeah, and then that's where all things real estate came from. And now I know why I'm extremely tired all the time, because that's a lot.
It is, but you are definitely making it, in terms of building a team for all things real estate and surviving the last year, 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And moving forward. So
yeah.
That's an incredible story. So let's talk about, no.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a story, all right.
It is a story, all right. That's right. So let's talk about systems and the systems that you implement in your business. Because what I observed is that, part of your success is, obviously it's you, it's your vision, you want to get things done, but from the beginning you implemented different systems, right? Because you sell a lot of lines online, so you need systems for that. You have a systems in the store, you think in terms of system and creating systems for yourself in order to be able to run the business.
Yeah.
So, the people that are listening to us are probably other entrepreneurs that want to make it, or they already made it, but they're thinking about how they can grow the business, how they can get to the next level. What would you say about the importance, why systems are so important?
So the crazy thing about all things real estate is I've never had retail experience ever in my life. I went from the restaurant industry. I grew up in that business. And then I went into working with kids, and then I went into real estate. I've never worked a retail store, even as a high schooler or any of that. So I had to learn this business entirely. Like, we built this business entirely from scratch. And it also, not only on that side of it, like the business side of it, not knowing, what systems I needed to put in place or any of that stuff. Like, I didn't know any of this. Also, we were selling a product that was not a product that was on the market at all. So we literally created a company that never existed in the past. We sell signs, and there are sign companies, but our signs are different. They're intended to be used a little differently. And then all of the other products that kind of come along with it. There's no company where you can buy a sold sign and a hoodie that says real estate life on it that you can wear in the supermarket and create a conversation with someone who is like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about selling my house. So that's the intention of the business. And that never existed. So we didn't even have, there was no research really to be had. Like, we were just figuring everything out on our own. So systems came up as the business kind of moved along, and it was like, oh, well, we need that system. And then something else would come up. Okay, we need a system for that. So we didn't have systems and then built the company. We did the company, and then the systems just kind of showed up, if you will. And then, so it's been 5 or 6 years since we really started the company and had our first sales online. And then every year, of course, or every month almost, you relook at, are the systems that are in place working? Do we need to change anything? Do we need to scrap something or beef something up? So yeah, clearly systems are just going to happen no matter what. And I think you have to be in tune with your business and, know what's going on, especially in the beginning, so that you know which systems are going to work for you, because, things can take time, and there are things that you're going to waste time on that aren't going to work, but that has to happen too, because how would you know you don't need it unless you tried it and it didn't work, So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. And I would like to, we should actually tell the listeners what is your website, because they have to check out what you sell. It's as you said, it's super cute, it's unusual. It's not your usual realtor stuff. So what's the address for your website?
It's allthingsrealestatestore.com, or the abbreviated version, because, our attention spans are 0, is ATRE store.com. But yeah, and that's another thing about systems, and a system that we're working on right now is trying to figure out, and this is a tough one actually for us. So if anybody has any ideas, let let us know. But trying to figure out, how long to give a product, because I'm telling you, we'll put out a product that we think is just going to fly off the shelves, and then it doesn't. And a couple months go by, and then all of a sudden everybody's buying it. And we're like, okay, so data is a huge thing for us right now. We're putting some systems in place to get the data so that we can put more systems in place once we know what that data is. Launching products has been a huge undertaking for us as well. We're constantly just on the cuff. It's like, oh, okay, my designer got this design done. Let's do a tester. Let's put it on the site, get it marketed, get it out there in Facebook ad land and see what happens. And so, and then we kind of forget about it unless it shows, unless we're ordering it from our supplier, which is ourselves, because now we manufacture our own products. But if we're ordering it to be printed more often than not, then we're like, oh, okay, that product's doing really well. And then maybe we can do another version of it. But we don't have a good system in place for it right now. So we're working on that as we speak.
It's a trial and error and see what works. And
it really is. And I think entrepreneurs get really, well, I mean, everybody's a little bit different. You have to be a risk taker when you're an entrepreneur, and some people naturally are, and some people are forced to be that, because if you're an entrepreneur, that's just how it happens, trial and error. You don't know and you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know until you try to put it out there and see what happens. And, and there's probably that whole, oh my gosh, I put a product out and I've sold $1 million, and that stuff does not happen. It's like going into the NFL or becoming an NBA player or whatever. It's a very small percentage of something going viral or selling, off the charts. That's not normal.
Absolutely. It's hard work. And I've seen you do that. And, let's talk about COVID and last year, COVID-19, the pandemic, 2020. I know a lot of our listeners are thinking, they are facing with, okay, now it's 2021. So it's either you reinvent yourself, you continue in a new normal. What is it for you? How is it like for you?
Just like everybody else, I think it was this time, March of last year, where, it was kind of creeping in a little bit. And then all of a sudden we were at a standstill and nobody knew what to do. Nobody, obviously we've never had COVID before, a pandemic, at least in, our lifetime. And so, we were in the same boat as everybody else. What are we going to do? And I actually turned to my staff and was like, okay, our options at this point is we shut down and you guys go on unemployment, because obviously my employees, we're a small team of 6, 7, and so we're all really close, and I worry about them. They're all younger, I'm like the mama bear. So I needed to make sure that they were taken care of first things first. And I'm sure a lot of business owners felt that way too. You feel responsible for them, of course. So, and then I was like, so we could go on unemployment and shut down until we know what's going on, or, it's like, I don't know. And all of them were like, no, we want to keep going if we can. And so we cut them down to part-time just because there was nothing happening and I couldn't pay them for not doing anything. I mean, there was still stuff to do, but not at a full-time capacity, and all of my staff are full-time. So we kind of cut down to part-time, and that ended up only happening for about 2 weeks. And we got an idea. We knew that real estate was still happening. It was just happening differently, obviously. And we're tired of the word pivot. I'm sure everybody else is, but it's what we had to do. And so we created virtual showings and virtual open house signs. And so, our company isn't just about selling products to people. It's also about educating them and helping them in their business. And here's a sign, and this is how you use it, and this is why. So we're constantly creating things that they didn't know they needed, or solving pain points that they didn't even really, they probably knew that they had it, but you don't think about that stuff. Realtors are such hard workers, and they're so busy on their day-to-day, and their number one concern is their clients, not their marketing. And so, but you can't have clients unless you're marketing, and
Right.
it's that vicious circle. So anyway, long story short, we did virtual open houses, and people were like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. So we gave them an idea to help them in their business. And then we're like, by the way, you should really buy the sign for that. So it worked out. It held us over for a while. Clearly, we have a lot of open house products, and those stopped selling, and so we pivoted a little bit more and leaned towards apparel and we didn't even realize this at the time. We didn't know everybody was going to work from home, and we were all going to be living in sweats and, having our hair up and all that good stuff for so long. And so our hoodies started to take off, and we were like, oh my goodness. So we added a couple more, colors and designs, and that has stayed. Like, apparel is what has gotten us through, and apparel was a small percentage of our business for a really long time. It was just, that was almost kind of the cute and fun part of it, was the apparel and the hats and stuff. And so yeah, it changed our business probably long term, and figuring out, when you're thinking about new products, obviously you don't want to put out products that aren't selling right now. So
Right.
it's like, what do you do with what's working, and how can you build on that and make it sustainable?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's your vision that is pushing you through and going forward. With working with you, I know you are very good at problem solving and looking at the problem, finding the data, as you said before. It's always having the data, having the systems for the data.
Yeah.
And figuring out where to go from there.
Yeah.
So what's the future like? What's 2021 and beyond?
Well, okay, so backing up what you just said about how good we are at that kind of stuff, I know that about us, but I also still feel like we're winging it. So I know that people are like, oh my gosh, that company looks like they just have it together. They probably don't. They're probably struggling and dealing with things just like you are at the moment. Like, you have your moments in time and your, I guess you call them seasons, where you just feel down and you're like, oh, this is never gonna, and I know a lot of, the big speakers, or, Shark Tank's one of my favorites. So Damon John is like, persevere, you got to keep going and push through. It really is true when you hear stuff like that. So, you're not alone, and you're not the only one, and your company is not going to go down unless you allow it to, I guess. Or if you want it to, maybe you're like, okay, this isn't for me. But I also want people to know that even though it looks like we have our stuff together, we're also behind the scenes, scrambling too. So 2021.
But the thing on that, I have to say, that's also your feeling, because I look at it compared to other companies, and you do have things together. I mean, you have the systems, you have your perseverance, you don't give up. But it's a good point. So those of our listeners, they can think, well, it's always like from the outside, looking from the outside in, it looks better than the inside out, right?
Yes. Yes. And we have our, systems in place, and we have our stuff together, and we can get through the day to day. I'm in long-term thinking mode right now, because this is my retirement. I'm not going to start another business or another company. I might do some spin-off stuff from this company, but I'm certainly not selling this company and moving on, or moving on. I mean, this is it. So, I'm 50. So I'm like, no, I'm 51. So I'm ready to retire. I'm tired, like I said. But yeah, no, I mean, I think pushing through, even when the systems aren't working and it's frustrating, it really does come down to that determination and that perseverance. And I mean, you can at least tell yourself, look, I'm not wasting all this time and money that I put into this to just quit, and so yeah, and it helps you get through figuring out what the system needs to be and to get it in place,
Absolutely.
Thought process. You need that.
So what will it take for you to retire? What's the
I thought I knew, and then I don't really know, because I don't know that I could ever fully retire. I just know that about myself. I think I'd be bored to tears, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are in their 70s or 80s, or even CEOs of companies. Things were different back then. When you have people that are in their 70s and 80s now, probably were like the CEO of a corporation, and now they're doing consulting because they're like, I've worked all my life, and no, I don't want to just, you want to do that stuff. You want to sit and do nothing and travel, but you probably also want to keep your brain going, and you're a creative person. You can't just turn that off. Like,
right.
You got to do something with it. So whether it's start a podcast or write a book or consult or whatever that may be. So retirement for me is definitely, I have no clue. I don't know.
It's okay. It's a journey, and it's totally fine not to know, because right now,
I'm too young for that. No, I'm kidding.
That's right. That's what I wanted to say. So
that's my brain struggle. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a matter of continuing and doing what you're doing and continue to improve. And, also you're a great employer. You really think about your staff. You want them to do well. You want everybody to feel included. And that's also, you're creating that game for your employees. I mean, I've seen it, right? So that is also, I know that that's important to you. So if you have any advice or anything you want to say about that in terms of creating that perfect team.
Yeah. We, I've always said from the beginning, and this is also funny, this is something I kind of just started listening to myself on, is that I will repeat things, I forget things all the time and I repeat that way. But when I talk about my business and my vision and my mission, it's not because I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I memorize it. It's because it's coming from me and from the heart, and it's what I intended. So it always comes back to what your intention was, whether it's your intention of why you started a company or why you're selling a product, or it always comes back to that. And so even without trying, you end up going that path anyway. So I find myself all the time saying to our customers, like, we literally wouldn't be here without you, right? Which is true. But for our customers, it's a sense of community for us, or really for me, where I feel like I sometimes call them clients, only because probably the real estate background, but they feel like my clients. They return and buy stuff all the time, not return stuff, but they are returning customers. So that keeps us going, because we're like, okay, we need new stuff for them, and so that means a lot. But it's exactly the same for my staff. This company would not exist without my staff. Every single one of them have a role. And, and I'm sure it's obviously the same in every other business, but a couple of them have been with me from the beginning. My designer, I literally wouldn't be here without her, because she takes exactly what I'm thinking in my head and puts it to paper. And so I live by that without even thinking about it. It's just, the way that it is. And so I'm sure that comes across in how I work with them and how I teach them, and, all that good stuff. So really, you are who you are, and don't try to be something you're not, especially when it comes to managing staff. Micromanaging, I'm still working on, because there's such a fine line between, am I micromanaging, or am I just making sure something got done because it's important, or, giving them, they have a ton of control, like, because I don't want to do their job. And so that's a work in progress, probably all the time, but yeah.
Absolutely. So that's just some great advice here for entrepreneurs and business owners, right? What we talked about vision, and having a vision and pursuing that, creating the systems, but it's a work in progress, and you have to work on it all the time. And some days you feel like you don't have it together. Some days you do. Yep. And it's, your the perception from the outside is not always the perception that you have from the inside.
Yep.
And always have a goal. So in terms of like, okay, if it's retirement, what is that goal? What does it look like? And if you don't know, it's okay, because it's something that is being created.
Yep.
And, really care about the people around you, because you want to empower realtors, you want to empower your staff, you want to empower everyone that I've known you now for probably like 4 years, and it's like you are all into empowering people. You would there is a great networking event, you will call me up and say, Adi, you should come to that event. Here, let me give you a ticket, right? So it's kind of like, connect to that one or connect to that one. So that is really, it's empowering the people around you, and then you're surrounding yourself with positive people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of the things I did, some money coaching and money work. I've never really hired coaches. I will hire consultants. Like, I hired you to consult me on the business end of things and getting my budget together and all that. And I didn't realize that I had a money issue. And well, I did, but I didn't know it was a me issue. And so I hired somebody to work with on money coach, and we did like the time tracking and like trying to figure out, because I was really in a rut, and I know a lot of people are when it comes to, I need help. I just don't know who that person is that you're going to hire. And so I did this time thing. It wasn't time blocking, but it's time charting. I think there's a better word for it. But I was writing down exactly what I was spending my time on. And it was so obvious once I saw that on paper, what was burning me out. And I noticed it in the trend because I was doing it a lot in the beginning, then it started to fade out, but I was already so burnt out by it. So not even realizing that. So seeing that was really important. But one of the things that came out of that was I wasn't doing any professional development. Like I wasn't taking any like classes to better myself as a person or or a CEO or a boss or whatever. I wasn't doing any work on that at all. It didn't show up in my time at all. And so that was one of the things she was like, you've got to do that for yourself. And literally the month after I realized that, we use a company called Klevit for our email marketing. They're freaking fantastic. When MailChimp and Shopify broke up, we had to find another company. So they're kind of like a MailChimp, but they're really fantastic. They care about their customers just like we do. Very like-minded. They had a conference in Boston, and I booked it and went, and it was one of the best conferences I had been to in a long time. I got so much information. It was a system we were actually using, so I could ask but they were just like us. They were giving us content and information to better our business because they care about us as their customers. And that's how you retain, obviously. So anyway, that kind of started the ball rolling for, okay, I need to be doing things to make myself better, because when I'm better, my staff are better, my company's better. And, so you got to take care of yourself first. It's the whole airplane thing. You got to put the mask on yourself first before you give it to your neighbor.
That's awesome. That is a great advice. And that's usually how I end the interviews with, is like, what advice can you give us to inspire us? But this is a great advice. Absolutely. And we know that CEOs definitely need the self-improvement, the professional development. Absolutely. That's great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, so in closing, you mentioned that you're going to write a book. So do you have anything you want to say on that to prepare us? I know we don't know the title yet. We don't know what it's going to be about, but
yeah. That's part of the process, though. I've always wanted to write a book. It's something that I wanted to write a book because I was constantly telling, realtors the same thing about their marketing. And so it's one of the reasons why we started the podcast too, because now I can be like, oh, we talked about that on our podcast. And I was talking to another realtor. They had that same problem. We talked about it there. You might get some ideas that way. And so I can still help them without giving them my time, which was the thing that I was doing the most, that my time audit, that's what it's called.
Time audit. Okay.
Yep. And so that came out of that. And then same with the book. I always wanted to write a book about, helping realtors market. That changes a lot, but there's still a baseline. There's always a foundation with anything that you do. And once you have that down, and I think realtors so often jump over that, and they want to get to the second floor of things. I just want it to be up and running, and they don't do the foundation. So clearly you can't build a house without that. So yeah, that's kind of the reasoning for that. And then I just always kind of wanted to do it for probably like 30 years. It's always been in the back of my mind. Do you remember, what was his name that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Yep.
Jack. He came to Portland and did one of those seminars where it's like, here's how you write a book and get it published and all that good stuff. And so ever since then, I've wanted to do something. So as an entrepreneur, you can't sit still. You've constantly got to be doing things. And so, yeah, that's my next move. I don't know, again, what it's going to be about.
So one thing is for sure, I'm going to have another interview with you when you publish the book, because we're going to talk about the launch of the book. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. And, that's an entrepreneur's world, is like, okay, you always figure out the end result first. And you're like, now you got to backtrack and figure out, how do I get to that point? So there, I have a goal. That's my goal.
Excellent. All right, Tracy. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. All right. And see you all next time.
Thanks for listening to the Systems Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.